Thank you for joining us today. My name is Melanie Frank, Master Ninja Selling Instructor, and today we are grateful to host an authentic conversation with two inspirational leaders that have changed the lives of so many through their words of wisdom and leadership, Bob Burg and Larry Kendall. Bob Burg is the author of a number of books on sales, marketing, and influence, and he sold nearly 2 million copies. Bob is the co-author of The Go-Giver and named one of the most influential motivational books ever written. Along with him, guiding our conversation, is Larry Kendall, co-creator of Ninja Selling Systems that has influenced the lives of more than 80,000 realtors across the world, and also the author of Ninja Selling. Last week, we released on Amazon the Ninja Selling audiobook, and it's already the #1 selling book on Amazon. So we're grateful to have you both with us today. And Larry, thank you so much for being with us. I'm going to hand this over to you, and I'm going to ask you one question, if you could start the conversation. And Larry, share with us how it is that you first met Bob Burg.
Thanks, Mel. I appreciate you putting this program together and giving Bob and I a chance to be together again. We've gone back a number of years. I'm a huge fan of Bob Burg, as are the thousands of ninjas. And so, Bob, it's such an honor to be with you again today. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Larry. The honor is mine, and you're a hero of mine, believe me.
Well, we have a mutual admiration for each other. You know, I'd like to start with a story of how I came to connect with the Go-Giver book, and then ultimately with Bob. It started with a friend of mine who's a top producing realtor in Denver, Colorado, by the name of Bruce Dunning. And Bruce is a very high producer. He's a very highly motivated, highly driven, hard worker, 24/7 type guy. And it was basically wearing him out. And he started having some serious heart problems. Ultimately, he had to have open heart surgery. And and they weren't sure if he was going to make it in that surgery, but he did. And I went down and had lunch with him to celebrate that he had made it through that surgery. And at that lunch, he gave me the Go-Giver book. And he said, Larry, I'd like to give you a gift. And he then sat there and from memory quoted the 5 stratospheric laws of success. And he said, you know, this book changed my life. And probably more importantly, this book probably saved my life. For most of my life, I was a go-getter. For the rest of my life, I'll be a go-giver. And here is this, Bruce, as I said, is a very a power type personality, a no nonsense, bottom line guy. And he said that with tears in his eyes. And I read that book and I had the same feeling. And this was right after the book came out. I think it was about 2008, maybe 2009. And we began to incorporate the book into our ninja training. And today we have we've given away since then about 70,000 books. But that doesn't count the books that the ninjas have given away. And they send me photos. I have one from Rick Edler. Some of you know Rick, and he's a ninja in California. The trunk of his car is filled with boxes of Go-Giver books and ninja books. So, Bob, you are making a huge impact in the world, certainly in the ninja world, but beyond it. And so we just appreciate you. And I think it would be interesting for our ninjas to know the history of how did you come up with the Go-Giver, these 5 principles, and how did you work with John David Mann to bring those to life in the book? Give us the history.
Sure. Well, years and years ago, I had a book. My first book on the market was called Endless Referrals, and the subtitle was Network Your Everyday Contacts into Sales. Excuse me. And it was a how-to book on how entrepreneurs and salespeople who knew they had a great product or a fantastic service, they knew it brought magnificent value to the marketplace, but they didn't quite have the confidence or the skill set to go out and create those relationships that would result in people wanting to do business with them both directly and then referring and introducing them to others. So it was a way to really build confidence in a step-by-step system, if you will. And my definition of a system is simply the process of predictably achieving a goal based on a logical and specific set of how-to principles. In other words, the the key is predictability. If it's been proven that by doing A, you'll get the desired results of B, then you know all you need to do is A and continue to do A and continue to do A, and you will get those desired results, much as you teach the ninja selling system. It's a system. So it was a book that has thankfully been successful, but it was a how-to book. And throughout the years, I'd always read parables, always enjoyed parables, short stories that have a message and I think, Larry, stories connect on a heart-to-heart level.
Mhm.
There's an old saying from the sages, words that come from the heart enter the heart. And I think stories allow that to happen. And so I thought, how could we take the basic premise of endless referrals, which was that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust, and turn that into a parable. So I sort of asked the question, what is the main characteristic of a person, of an entrepreneur or salesperson who is able to quickly and sustainably create these kinds of know, like, and trust relationships? And what it came down to is they're givers. They're always looking for ways to give value to others. So coming up with a title was pretty easy, but the best thing I did for that book was asking John David Mann to co-author it with me and be the lead writer and storyteller. I knew John because I was writing a monthly column for a magazine where he was editor-in-chief. And he always, and I know you've written a lot of articles, and you know how editors, and they're great at what they do, but they can kind of just chop up some of the best stuff, and they just print it. It's kind of uncomfortable. But he would always just so nicely and thoughtfully, he'd send back what he did. He'd say, I made this edit here, I took this out here, I did this, is this okay? And the running joke was every month I'd send him back an email that said, not only is it okay, you write my stuff better than I write my stuff. And back then, very few people knew what a genius writer and storyteller he was in a very specific niche. Now, he's the co-author and ghostwriter of choice. So there's tons of books he has that are bestsellers that he's written that most people don't even know. That he's involved in it. But back then, few people knew. Fortunately, I was one of the few who did. And so I asked him, and when I say asked, I mean I pleaded with him to be the co-author and lead writer. And fortunately, he said yes to it, and we were able to collaborate. And about, I think, 25 or 26 rejections later from New York publishers, we finally found the perfect publishing partner, which was Portfolios. So that's really how the book came to be.
Well, it's a blockbuster book, and it's an iconic book, timeless.
Thank you.
Came out in 2007. Just continues to change lives. Let's review. Our ninjas that are on this call, they've read the book and they're familiar with it. But let's just summarize the 5 stratospheric laws of success to kind of kick this off.
Sure. The laws themselves are the laws of value, compensation, influence, authenticity, and receptivity. Law number 1 being the law of value, which says your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment, which when you first hear it's a little bit counterintuitive. Give more in value than I take in payment. Isn't that kind of a recipe for bankruptcy? So we simply have to understand the difference between price and value, that knowing that price is a dollar figure, it's a dollar amount, it's finite, it is what it is. Value, on the other hand, is the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something to the end user or beholder. In other words, what is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, idea, what have you, that brings so much worth or value to another human being that they will willingly exchange their money for it, and feel grateful that they did, be ecstatic that they did, while you make a very healthy profit. Just a very basic example would be, as a realtor, by the very nature of what you do, you give more in value than you take in payment. Let's say you take a listing with someone and you charge a fee, hopefully a very healthy fee, for that listing. Why? Because you're giving them much more in value than you take in payment. On a very basic level, you are helping them to sell their home at a much higher price than they could get without your help, your hard work, your knowledge, and your wisdom. You're helping them sell it quicker than they would without you, with far less aggravation than they would without you. You're handling the advertising, you're handling the staging, you're handling the showings, you're handling the negotiations, you're handling the inspections, all these things. So by the time you help them sell that home, you have given them much more in value than what you take in payment, while you have made a very, very healthy profit. But this happens not because you're focused on the fee you're receiving, okay? You're focused on the immense value you get to provide your client. This is why John David Mann and I say that money is simply an echo of value. It's the thunder, if you will, to value's lightning, meaning nothing more than that the value is the focus. The value comes first. The money you receive is simply a very natural and direct result of the value you've provided. Law number 2, and Larry, I promise I'll go faster on these. It's just that
let me jump in on law number 1 there, if I could, Bob. You know, I love that, and I love your comment. It's the echo. Money is the echo of the value. It reminds me of Wallace Wattles' 100-year-old book called The Science of Getting Rich. He has a quote in there. You love that book as well, and he says, "We are here to create, not to compete for that which is already created. We were put on this planet to create value, not to compete or try to extract value from others." I just love that. And it ties so beautifully in with law number 1.
Oh, thank you so much. I love that book. I think I read that book 35 times in a row. I just, you know, so resonated. He talks about, he was the first one where I heard the term living on the creative plane as opposed to the competitive plane. And
Yes.
you know, Larry, that doesn't mean we're not aware of our competition. It doesn't mean we don't notice them. It doesn't mean we don't know their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, what have you. I mean, it's the real world. There are but it's that we don't focus on the competition. We
Right.
understand them, we acknowledge them, but we focus on creating value for others. And that's the key.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Law number 2 is the law of compensation. This one says your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. So where law number 1 says give more in value than you take in payment, law number 2 tells us that the more people whose lives you touch with the exceptional value you provide, the more money with which you'll be rewarded. So, you know, it's the person, it's that realtor who does such a wonderful, fantastic job in listing that home, that those people just love them, and they would do business with them again if that was or they'd certainly refer them to others. So that realtor is very quickly amassing what we call an army of personal walking ambassadors. So, you know, as Nicole Martin, the CEO in the story, told Joe, the protege, law number 1, the law of value, that represents your potential income, but it's not enough to serve just one person, no matter how wonderfully you do it. Law number 2 is all about how many lives, excuse me, you impact with that value. So we could say exceptional value plus significant reach equals very high compensation.
You know, Bob, that's one area that I think I notice the people who are attracted to Ninja, they understand value, and they're very good at creating value. Where they're most challenged, in my observation, is law number 2, which is their reach or their impact. Are they able to scale their business so that they can create that level of value for so many? And scalability, and that's where it gets back to having a system to deliver that value systematically at scale.
And yeah, and be able to leverage that wonderful value you've provided into referrals. And
Exactly.
I think every Ninja salesperson understands that the benefits of referrals, while there are many, they tend to come down to 4 really, I think, big benefits. One, it's simply easier to set the appointment with a referred prospect. You're going in on borrowed influence. Number 2, fee is less of an issue. It doesn't mean it's a non-issue. You've still got to be able to communicate the appropriate value, but it's less of an issue because, again, that borrowed influence, that borrowed trust. They know you're someone who you know what you're doing. Number three, it's easier to complete the sale, whether the sale is that listing or the sale is the sale of a home, or just the sale of having a person commit to working with you. This happens as a result of, again, borrowed trust, or what we call vicarious experience. So in other words, this new person, this new customer or client, they've never worked with you themselves, but someone who they know, like, and trust has said, this is the person you need to work with. This is the only person you need to talk to. This is the person who will take care of you. This is the person who has your best interests at heart. And the fourth benefit is really that referred prospects are already of the mindset that that's how you do business, because that's how they met you, right? So in their world, you are referred to others. You meet people through referral. You sell on high value rather than low price or low fee. You complete the transaction, and then you are referred to others. So as long as you know how to go through the process of asking correctly, you will receive plenty of referrals. And that way, as you said, you're able to leverage that value.
You bet. So the secret to scale is build relationships and build a referral-based business, because you can scale that a lot easier. It's a lot better business, a lot easier business to do. So great advice. Great advice. Thanks for the 4 keys to referrals, Bob. That was icing on the cake. So
my pleasure.
Let's go to law number 3.
Okay, sure. Law number 3 is the law of influence. And this one, Larry says, your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. Again, this is counterintuitive when you first hear it. It sounds counterproductive at best, maybe even downright Pollyanna-ish, right, at first. But let's understand something, if I may kind of qualify that, placing other people's, or your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. This should never be misconstrued as being anyone's doormat, or being a martyr, or being self-sacrificial in any way. Absolutely not at all. It simply, as Joe, the protege in the story, learned from several of the mentors, the golden rule of business, of sales, is simply that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. And Larry, as you know, there's no faster, more powerful, more effective way to elicit those feelings toward you from others than by genuinely moving from an I focus or me focus to an other focus. Making, as Sam, one of the mentors in the story, explained to Joe, making your win all about the other person's win. And, you know, this is very, when we say that about placing other people's interests first, there's nothing woo-woo or way out there about it. It's actually very rational. You know, I often, when I speak at a sales conference, I'll begin by saying, and I don't say this in a dogmatic fashion, but in more of just a fun, joking around fashion, I'll say, you know, nobody's going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet, right? You know, they're not going to buy from you because you need the money or because you'd like the sale to happen. They're not going to buy from you or list with you, whatever, just because you're a really nice person. No, they're going to do business with you because they believe that they will be better off by doing so than by not doing so. And when you think about it, that's the only reason anyone should do business with you or from me or from anyone else. But the great news about that is that realtor who, again, genuinely, authentically is focused on bringing exquisite value to that person, that's the one that creates that, what we call benevolent context for success. You're earning that person's know, like, and trust. And that's really what the law of influence is all about.
You know, Bob, I'd like your thoughts on this, because we've had several ninjas express concern that they, especially right now in a difficult time, they feel like they've been giving, and it just doesn't seem like anything's happening. They feel stuck energy-wise, emotionally, and they're wondering really if their tank is empty on giving, and they're not receiving anything in return. And I have some thoughts on what may be going on there, but I'd be curious. Any idea? Have you ever seen that happen where somebody is giving, putting what they feel is the other person's interest first, but really nothing's happening in their business? Have you ever seen that happen? And what do you do?
Well, yeah, and there's two contexts here. One is if we're talking about the current virus that's happening, because this is a very specific situation. But
Sure.
one is just if someone feels that way anyway, that they're giving to the point they're being taken advantage of. Well,
Right.
first of all, we always need to keep in mind that there is nothing about being a go-giver that is congruent with being taken advantage of. Okay, so if you find yourself constantly being taken advantage of, and I don't mean once or twice, I mean we're all going to get taken advantage of once or twice, that's life, but I'm talking about a pattern of such. And if you find a pattern of being taken advantage of, it's not because you're a nice person or a kind person or a go-giver, it's because you're doing things in a certain way that creates the environment for you to be taken advantage of. If you feel that way, then I congratulate you for recognizing it, because then you're in a position to be able to do something about it. But never do we need to do anything that that we feel is incongruent with our values, or that we shouldn't be doing, or allowing someone to take advantage of us. It's just not something we should do. So so that's the first part. That would be in terms of just a generic situation. In terms of what's happening with the coronavirus and the fact that right now, yes, you're giving a lot more than you're receiving, because right now there's not a lot of business taking place, as far as I know, with the realtors I've spoken with throughout the country. So yes, so right now what you're basically needing to do is find ways to provide value that is not actually business related, but is just human related. And there's many ways we're able to do that. I'm happy to give some examples. We can go through that, but ways of staying in touch with people in a value-based way that just lets them know you care, you're thinking about them, you want to be a part of the solution. But yeah, I mean, when when literally there's no business to be done because people aren't allowed to go outside, well, it's not going to happen right now. And and successful people, they deal in truths. They understand what is. They don't let that. They understand what the problems are. They don't focus on the problems. They focus on the solution. So they're saying to themselves right now, anything I do right now in terms of reach out, in terms of adding value, in terms of connecting people, in terms of, that's going to come back later, but not
Great.
now, during this time.
Great advice, Bob. I will chime in here and say that number one, be patient. It's kind of like planting seeds. It takes a while for them to germinate, to sprout, and to have a harvest. And so many people want life to be like a vending machine, where they want an instant response, and it just doesn't happen that way. If you're giving consistently, ultimately there will be a return on that investment. The other thing is, make sure you've got the right energy, and that you truly are interested in them. You're truly practicing law number 3, and it's not like, well, I've got a quota to meet, and so you're pretending to practice the law of influence.
Can I, Larry, can I make one other comment on that?
Sure.
One other thing that I didn't bring up, and you reminded me of that with what you just said. Sometimes when someone will say to me, well, I've been giving and giving and giving, and haven't received, and the time has been that they probably should. I listened to what they're doing, and it seems it would be logical that it should be happening. I'll do a diagnostic with them, and I'm telling you, 99.9 times out of 100, if not 100 out of 100, when I ask them about providing value to others, and they swear they are absolutely giving value to others, I'll ask, is it value that they see as being of value? Or is it value as easy as being of value? Because remember, value is always in the eyes of the beholder. It's not what we find to be of value or what we think they should think is of value. It's what they see as of value. That's why, when it comes to selling, you ask the question, what is so? If you were to define selling, what would it be? It's simply discovering what the other person wants, needs, or desires, and helping them to get it.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Let's go to law number 4.
Yeah, this is the law of authenticity. And this one says the most valuable gift you have to offer is yourself. The mentor in this part of the story, of course, was a realtor, Deborah Davenport. And she shared a lesson that she learned that was very helpful to her. And that is that all the skills in the world, the sales skills, technical skills, people skills, as important as they are, and they are all indeed very, very important, they're also all for naught if you don't come at it from your true, authentic core. But when you do, when you, as we like to say, show up as yourself day after day, week after week, month after month, people feel good about you. They feel confident in you. They feel safe with you. Why? Because they know who they're getting. Right? And we crave, as human beings, we crave consistency. We want to be able to make sense of the world and know what to expect. And they see that you are who you are. You show up as yourself. People then begin to know you, like you, love you, trust you, want to be a part of your life. What, right? So we know it's not only good personal policy, but good business policy to be authentic. So why do people sometimes not show up authentically, but instead they show up as a, I guess the proper Latin term is phonus balonus, right? They don't really show up as themselves. And it might default to the answer, well, they're not honest, or they're trying to pull one up. Well, it's a big world out there. We have to know there are people like that, but that's not usually the case. Overwhelmingly, the issue, Larry, is that they just don't have the self-confidence to show up authentically. They don't understand and embrace the true value they bring to the table. I think as human beings, we all have two types of value, right? We have intrinsic value, which means just as a human being, we show up, we have value. But we also have what I call market value. And I define market value as that combination of strengths, traits, talents, and characteristics that allows us to add value to others, to the marketplace, in a way in which we will be, in this case, financially rewarded. We all have these assets of value, if you will, but they're hard for us to recognize in ourselves at times because we're human beings. And as human beings, we're very emotionally involved with ourselves. And we see the world from our own point of view. And a lot of times those things we do that are very special, whether it's the way we're able to listen to people or empathize with people or connect people, or the way we understand something and can explain it in such a way that other people, whatever the strength happens to be, we don't realize it's special. And when we don't recognize our true value, what we bring to the table, that's when we allow ourselves to be negotiated down on fee because we don't feel we have that value that warrants it. Or we, whatever it is we do so we really need, and this is why it's so important to have people that either you work with or a manager or someone who can really help you to recognize that value you bring to the table. And when that's the case, you can really go anywhere because you just, you're able to lead with your strengths.
Bob, one of the things I notice on the law of authenticity, and especially with newer people in the industry, I'll meet somebody who is just this fabulous person. You meet them, perhaps they're a server in a restaurant, or perhaps they're a school teacher, or you meet them somewhere and they just are loving, warm, connecting. They've got that great personality. You think, man, they'd be great in real estate. They get their license, and the first thing they do is they start acting weird. And they start acting like they think they're supposed to act as a salesperson.
Exactly, right.
And I say, wait a minute, just be yourself, be authentic, just be who you are. That's what people want. You don't have to pretend to be something different.
Right. And that's because of what the world tells us about salespeople, right?
Yeah.
And so, if you believe those stories, if you believe that selling is about trying to convince someone to buy something they don't want or need, which is not selling, that's called being a con artist, then if you think that's what it is, well, that's what you're going to do. But no, and that's why I so appreciate Ninja Selling, and that's why I so appreciate what you do, because it's really just helping people understand. Be yourself. That doesn't mean you don't keep learning. No, and authenticity, by the way, should never be confused with not growing. You know, it's like the person who says, well, I have anger issues and I yell at people a lot. And if I were to change and act differently, that wouldn't be authentic of me. Well, that's hogwash. That's malarkey. That just means that that person has an authentic problem
Right.
that they need to authentically work on and improve upon in order to be a higher, more effective, authentic version of themselves. So we never want to use authenticity as an excuse for staying where we are. We want to utilize it as a motivation to step into the highest version of ourselves.
Beautiful, beautiful. You know, Bob, on law number 5, the law of receptivity, I think this is one when I first read it, struck me because I was always brought up to it's better to give than to receive. I'll wrestle somebody for the check at lunch. I never want to be the receiver, always want to be the giver. And this was a big aha for me on law number 5. So let's talk about the law of receptivity.
Yeah, I think so many of us, Larry, have gone through that. The law itself, the law of receptivity, says the key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving. You know, this really means nothing more than understanding that we breathe out and we breathe in. Just try to do one without the other. Very hard to sustain and thrive that way, right? We breathe out carbon dioxide, we breathe in oxygen. We breathe out, which is giving. We breathe in, which is receiving. Giving and receiving are simply two sides of the very same coin, and they work in tandem. It's not a matter of, are you a giver or a receiver? That's the treacherous dichotomy. That's what we call the false dilemma, the unnecessary use of the word or. No, you're a giver and a receiver. The challenge, and why so many of us for so long had a challenge with this, and you know, I totally relate to what you're saying, is because we've based on everything, you know, upbringing, environment, schooling, news media, television shows, movies, popular culture, cultural mores. What are we taught? That, you know, the good people are poor and striving and struggling, but oh, they're happy, and they're always being taken advantage of by the wealthy, the rich people who are mean and nasty and cowardly and do horrible things. You know, again, it's a big world. There's lots of people who do lousy things and seem to benefit, but it's not usually the case. And we hear it all around us, and we see it in movies, we see it in TV shows, it's popular culture. You know, back when I was a kid, it was J.R. Ewing in the show Dallas, who was the epitome of the evil, you know, capitalist who, right, you know. But here's the thing, you see it enough times, from the time when I say see it, I mean hear it and have it fit into you. So from the time you're a little kid all the way up, it gets into your head. And not only not into your conscious head, it gets into your unconscious. And that's the most insidious thing of all. So you grow up in not consciously, but unconsciously. Well, the poor people, they're honest, they're righteous, they're the rich people. Oh, I wouldn't want to be like one of them. So now you're an adult and you start providing immense value to other people, and you're doing all the right things, and you've got money and prosperity coming to you, but inside that unconscious, well, wait a second, but if I'm rich, doesn't that mean I did something wrong? Doesn't it mean I'm not a nice person? Doesn't it mean my friends are not going to like me? Doesn't mean, right, all these, you know, the best book I ever read on that, and it didn't really touch on, well, it did touch on it, but it wasn't the main, but it was the main idea. It was written in 1960. It was called Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell
Maltz, yep.
He talked about really what I call belief systems. And he's talking about the subjective truths, the way we see the world, which is not necessarily the truth. It's our truth based on the programming we've been given. And then, again, it's all unconscious. And so, and when we didn't, so there's a lot that has to do with this. I would say, and my suggestion to people, make a study of prosperity. Because all the garbage naturally about lack and limitation and all those things, it comes in all the time. You see it on Twitter and Facebook and on the news and in the paper, if there are still newspapers people are reading, you know, all the different things. But But we've got to reach out and listen to and watch the videos and read the books on prosperity and feed that consciously into our heads.
Beautifully said, Bob. You know, the our money blueprints that we have, if we have some of those blueprints you just described, we will actually either self-sabotage or push money away. We won't be able to receive. And so that was, you went a lot deeper into that law than is in the book, and I really do appreciate that. Let me ask you this. One of the things I hear quite a bit from givers is, how do I say no to somebody? I mean, I want to be a great person. I want to build relationships. I want to say yes as much as I possibly can. But what happens when I'm working too many hours, and how do I say no?
And it's such a great question, and it's such an important question because, again, as a ninja, dare I say, as a go-giver, you know, you're going to be even more successful than you even are now. Okay, and the more successful you become, the more people ask you to do stuff, all sorts of stuff. Okay, some you want to do, and some is good to do, but others isn't. And you tend to have to say no a lot more than you say yes. The key is saying no in such a way that honors the other person and their feelings and their humanity while you're respecting your own boundaries. So can I take you through a couple of?
Absolutely. Please do.
There's been a big thing for a while. It started about probably 10 years ago and kind of caught on. And while I don't mean in any way to disrespect the thought of this, I don't think it's productive. In fact, I think it's counterproductive. And that is the saying, no is a complete sentence. Okay, and it's supposed to be very empowering. Oh, okay, yeah, I'm just going to say no to people. So let's say someone asks you to do something. They ask you to serve on a committee. We'll use something very generic. And for whatever reason it is, you don't want to. It's just not something you want to do. No one's life is depending on it, so it's not something you feel compelled to do. It's better that you don't do it for whatever reason you have. Now, if no is a complete answer, and this person who thought highly enough of you to ask you to serve on this committee ask you to do so, and you just say no. I don't think that might be a complete sentence. I mean, actually, it is a complete, but I don't think it's a good one because first of all, it's rude. Secondly, this person is going to feel put off and probably never ask you to do anything again. And this is a person you might want to keep the door open with. And even if you didn't care about doing that, the fact is saying no like that is incongruent with your value system, which is treating people with respect and kindness. So I don't think that's a good option. The other option people have, which again, I don't agree with this one, is to kind of fib just a little bit. Maybe say, well, I would, but I don't have the time. The issue with this is twofold. One, you know that it's not that you don't have the time, it's that you don't want to do the thing you're being asked to do. You place more value on not doing it than you do on doing it. Okay, but here's the other thing. This person is probably going to have a good response for this. So they're either going to say, okay, well, I'll tell you what, I'll come back in 6 months then when we're going to be doing this again. Well, now you've painted yourself in a corner 6 months from now. You've just pushed it off. Or they'll answer in a way that it's obvious time is not an issue. Now you either have to admit that you are fibbing because you just really don't want to do it, which is going to create bad feelings all around. Or in order to save face, what do you have to do? Do the thing you don't want to do. And since, again, being a go-giver is not being a doormat, no, or doing things you don't, no, I don't think that's a good. So let me share something with you that if you'll practice this just a few times, I'm telling you, it will make a huge difference. So let's say the person, again, asks you to serve on a committee. All you need to do is simply say, thank you so much. While it's not something I'd like to do, please know how honored I am to be asked. And that's
beautifully said.
Depending upon your style, you might say it a little bit differently. You might say, thank you so much for asking. While it's not something I choose to do, please know how very grateful I am that you'd even think of asking me. Again, anything like that. Now, what you did, You thank them. You were polite. You were respectful. You honored them. You told them you were honored just by being asked. But what you didn't do is provide an excuse for them to hang their hat on. Now, if they're the type that isn't going to at first take no for an answer, and they say, oh, but come on, we really need, whatever, wait patiently. Don't interrupt. Don't be defensive. Just have a look of kindness and, on your face. Wait till they pause, and then simply say, oh, I appreciate it. I'd rather not. But again, thank you so much. And what you'll have done is you'll have trained them, or maybe retrained them, that they can always ask, and that's fine, that you appreciate that. But when you say no, it's no.
That's beautifully said, Bob. What great advice for all of us. We're going to be running short on time, so we'll wrap up with a couple of final questions here. I know one question that came in from the ninjas was on mentorship and finding a mentor, and how do you select a mentor, or if you're a mentor, how do you select the mentees? Any advice you would have for us on mentorship?
Well, I think in finding a mentor, which is always a great idea, because mentorship can, with the right person, can cut your learning curve by years. And of course, you want to have someone whose values are congruent with yours, and to, someone you respect and someone of high character. I think the biggest challenge I see with people asking for people to mentor them is they'll kind of, without having, a real relationship with this person, they'll just say, hey, would you be my mentor? And it can kind of come across a little bit as though it's, an entitlement, right? Just that you expect it. It's almost like saying to someone you hardly know, would you share 40 years of your life's experience with me, even though you don't know me from a hole in the wall? Again, it just I'm not saying it could never work, that the person would say, sure, but probably not, because they have a lot of other people who are also wanting their time. However, you can certainly ask anyone, even if you don't know them well at all. You can let them know, and here's how I would frame it, and I'll give you my reason for doing so, is to say something like, I know you're very busy, and if this is not something that you either have time to do or even want to do, I'll totally understand. I'm wondering if I may ask you one or two very specific questions. Now, when you do that, you've done a couple of things. First, you've respected and honored the process. You haven't in any way come across as though they owe you, anything. You've also given them what I call the out or the back door. You let them know if they don't have the time, or even if it's not something they want to do. Totally acceptable. Absolutely acceptable. And, Burg's law of the out or back door is the bigger the out or back door you give someone to take, the less they feel the need to take it. Okay, so you don't provide the back door so that they definitely will take it, but it's so they feel comfortable enough with you, they don't feel the need to. Okay, but here's the third thing you do. You asked for something very specific. You said, may I ask you one or two very specific questions? This says to the person that you're a person of business, that you have an agenda. And when I use the word agenda, I'm using it in a positive, not a hidden agenda. You have an agenda. You're letting them know you one or two very specific questions. They're much more likely to say, sure. Now, not everybody will, but not everybody has to. You're looking for the ones who will, and most will. Now, here's the thing. When you're either in person with them on the phone, however you're doing it, the medium doesn't matter. Don't take up a lot of their time. Make sure to keep it very, thank them profusely afterwards. Let them know you look forward to putting their wisdom into action right away. You'll keep in touch and let them know how things. Now, that very day, I would write them a handwritten, personalized note of thanks. And excuse me, it simply says, dear Mr. or Ms. So-and-so, thank you so much again for sharing your valuable time and wisdom for me. This was just priceless. I look forward to applying your wisdom right away, and we'll keep in touch and let you know how things are going. Best regards. Put it in a number 10 envelope, or whatever envelope it is, hand write it in blue ink, hand stamp it, send it off to them. I would also make a small donation. It doesn't have to be anything big, but I would find out their favorite charitable cause, which you can easily find out on by researching them, or asking their administrative assistant or what have you, but very easy to do. Find out their charitable cause, and make a small donation in their name. It'll get back to them, of course. They'll be notified that you did that. You're not doing it to kiss up or anything, not at all. You're just doing it to communicate that you respect the process, that you so appreciate them, that you value them, that even though you right now can't provide the kind of value to them that they can provide to you, you care and you want to do so. Now, a few weeks later, a couple weeks or whatever, you send an email or you call them and let them know what's happening, what's going on. Maybe you have another question. And if a mentor-protege relationship is supposed to develop, it will. What we want to do is make sure we're not too attached emotionally to it happening with any one person. It might be you speak to this person one or two times and somebody else one time and someone else, and eventually you find that mentor that's an ongoing relationship. But we don't want to be attached to the outcome. Just do the right things in the process, as you know, and the right things are going to happen.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Bob, just to kind of wrap up here, a couple things. The Go Giver was the first of a series, and you've got a series of Go Giver books. They're fantastic. Just share with our ninjas briefly those books and what else is available to them on this Go Giver path.
Sure. Well, the first is the Go Giver, and then Go Giver Sell More, which is and Go Giver Sell More is the only one in the series that's not a parable. That's the one that you're kind enough to include. That is more of a guide, an application guide to the first book. The next parable is the Go Giver Leader. And then the last one is the Go Giver Influencer. And I get the Go Giver Influencer is both John's and my favorite. Because influence, we believe, is such a key. Being able to communicate in a way that you're able to really get the results you want when dealing with others while helping them feel genuinely good about themselves is so key. It's also got very much of an animal theme. So if you're an animal lover, you'll probably enjoy, that subplot, as well.
That's great. That's great. Bob, the ninjas are such fans of yours, and we've had such a great relationship over the years. You've been to our company twice. You were just here last December. Our people are still talking about you.
Thank you.
We share similar philosophies of business and life. Any final thoughts you'd like to share with our ninjas before we wrap this up?
Well, there's one story I'm reminded of that happened about 40 years ago that really kind of, I think, changed me. It was my epiphany, if you will. And I'm not sure if I've shared this with you or if I shared that at the last program. And again, before I do end, just, please know the huge level of respect I have for you, Larry, and for, everyone at Ninja. I really do feel such a part of your family, and I'm delighted to be introduced to Sotheby's, and they are a go-giver company anyway, and I'm glad to see there are so many who have become, ninjas. This is almost 40 years ago, and I'd been in sales for a couple of years. I'd studied sales. I had done well, but I was in a slump. I was in a pretty massive slump, actually. And I don't know if that's ever happened to you, but boy, it can be tough. And really, it was because there was a problem. That problem was me, but I didn't realize at the time. And I was selling at the time a high-end product for a company. And I remember coming back from a non-selling appointment. Now, it was not supposed to be a non-selling appointment. It was supposed to be a selling appointment, but my own inadequacy made it so that the person who really would have benefited from the product didn't end up buying. So not only did he not get the benefit of the product, I, of course, also didn't earn a fee, a commission. So instead of a win-win, it was a lose-lose. And I remember going back to the office, and I think I was in the waiting room or the salesperson's line, whatever it was, 40 years ago. Kind of hard to have all the, but there was a gentleman there. He was not in sales. I think he was in the engineering department, and he soon actually retired. I did not know him very well. He seemed like a nice guy, but he was one of these people who he didn't say much, but whenever he did say something, it was always very profound. And so I think he saw me as sort of Joe in the story. a young up-and-comer, worked hard, lots of potential, but the focus just wasn't in the right place. And so when he said to me, Burg, he was a last name kind of guy. When he said, Burg, can I give you some advice? I said, absolutely, please do. I need it. And he said, if you want to make a lot of money in sales, he said, don't have making money as your target. Your target, he said, is serving others. Now, when you hit the target, you'll get a reward. And that reward will come in the form of money. And you can do with that money whatever you choose. But never forget, the money is simply the reward for hitting the target. It ain't the target itself. Your target is serving others. And I remember it hit me. And that is that great salesmanship is never about the salesperson. Great salesmanship is never about the product or the service, as important as those are. Great salesmanship is about how you touch the life of another human being. It's how you help make their life better, help solve their problems, provide immense value in a way that they see it as being of value, in a way that they benefit from your product or service and from that additional value that you bring to the table. And you know, Larry, I think that once we understand that selling is not about us, that it's about them, we're 9 steps ahead of the game in a 10-step game. You know, Larry, I can't hear you. I think you.
I said, wow, Bob, that is a beautiful summary of everything we've talked about today. And I just appreciate you so much. What a great advice to finish on. And, you know, it's been said that your life is today the same as it'll be tomorrow, except for the places you go, the people you meet, and the books you read. And clearly for me, the books I've read, specifically the Go Giver series, meeting you, you were so kind to write the foreword for the Ninja Selling Book, which we appreciate. You're part of the Ninja family. And just appreciate you taking the time to be with us today for a short hour. And with that, I just want to say thanks, and I'll turn it back over to Melanie to wrap this up for us. So, Bob, thank you so much.
Thank you, Larry.
Larry Kendall, Bob Burg, you both are truly an inspiration for us all. We're so grateful for your guidance, your wisdom, and your leadership today. You know, this hour of power has been a true gift for us, for every single one of us watching you today and learning from you. And thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts for being our go-givers on this day. And we look forward to more inspiration and being able to return the gift of being go-givers ourselves. Thank you so much.